Well, hello everyone, and welcome to First Baptist Church of Crystal River in our Wednesday evening Fireside Chat. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. We began a brand new month, the month of July. It's now July the 1st, and I just want to give you some updates about what's happening at First Baptist Church and what we anticipate during the month of July. This past couple of weeks have shown a lot of increase in COVID-19 cases throughout Citrus County. In fact, from June the 10th until the end of the month, the number of cases has literally more than doubled. And because of that, we're making a couple of changes from what I talked about last week. And so I just want to bring you up to date as we begin this brand new month. Let me begin by saying that the church offices will remain open Monday through Friday from 8:30 until 3:30. And if you happen to be in Crystal River and just want to stop by and say hello, we would love to see you. We had some people this past week just kind of stop by and say hi, and it's great to see people again. I know many of us, we haven't seen each other in the past 3 months, and it would be great to see you again as you stop by when you're in Crystal River. Online throughout the month of July is going to be pretty much what you're used to. We're not making many major changes here. Sunday school, Mike Howard will continue to teach us through the book of Proverbs throughout the month of July. The sermon will be every Sunday. We're going to make a slight change in the sermon. Instead of me doing the sermon from home, soon you'll be able to watch the sermon from church. We're going to record it and then play it the next week, so kind of like you're at church again. So you'll be able to see the sermon as it is filmed from church. We will continue to have music. The Wednesday night Fireside Chat will continue to be online only. No Wednesday night service, and the children's message will continue as well. On campus in July, it's the same as it was in June. 9:30 is the contemporary service in Victory Hall. 11 o'clock is the traditional service in the sanctuary. We do want to begin opening up our children's ministry in the month of July. So at 9:30, beginning this Sunday, July the 5th, is going to be Sunday school for children, also for nursery. And 11 o'clock is children's church and nursery as well. So our children's ministry will be open on Sundays. It will be closed on Wednesday, but it will be open on Sunday morning. We are hoping to do Vacation Bible School right before school starts again. The dates are July the 27th through the 31st. And that'll be from 9 o'clock in the morning until noon. We're still going to check the COVID cases. If they continue to spike, we might have to cancel this, but for the moment, we want to let you know it's on the calendar, and we're praying that those cases go down so that we can have Vacation Bible School. Here are a couple of things that have changed from last week. Sunday school in the month of July is going to be online only. So the spike in cases has caused many teachers to say they're not quite ready, and many of the people in the class aren't ready either. So Sunday school in July is online only. And another change is the Agape House was supposed to reopen on July the 6th, and that has changed. In fact, it's going to be closed indefinitely. Basically, it'll be closed until we come up with some kind of solution for COVID-19, whether that's a vaccine or it just kind of burns out or the numbers get really low. So if you do have donations, they're not accepting donations. You may want to look at some other charitable organizations in Citrus County to give those items to, because we really don't know when the Agape House will be open once again. Well, with that in mind, with all of those updates, let me lead us in a word of prayer, and then we're going to talk about understanding your anger, part 2. Heavenly Father, thank you that you are God, that you are on your throne. And Father, thank you that we can just trust you when things are difficult, when things are frustrating, when things are just not quite going the way we want them to. And I know right now is a difficult time for many people. Things are up in the air. I know with school starting in August and not quite sure what that's going to look like, and people's lives are very unsettled. And Father, sometimes that causes us to get frustrated and angry. But Father, I pray tonight as we talk about anger that you'll help us to manage that through the power of your Spirit, and to use anger for positive things, not for negative things. So Father, I just pray that you'll teach us and help us tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, before I get to the lesson, just want to remind you about how to give. There are actually 4 ways to give. One is at church on Sunday morning. We have the offering at the end of the service where you can just drop your offering into the offering plate. You can stop by the church office and drop it off. We're there again Monday through Friday from 8:30 until 3:30. Or you can continue giving online. Just go to our webpage, firstbaptistcr.org. Click under the tab that says Giving, and you'll have some easy instructions about how to give. Or you can continue to mail your offering to the church at 700 North Citrus Avenue, Crystal River, Florida 34428. We have now finished the month of June, and June was again a very good month. So I just want to say thank you for your faithfulness to God, for your generosity. The church is doing well financially because all of us are working together to make that happen. So thank you to everyone who is finding a way to give. Well, let's talk about understanding your anger. And I chose the word understanding on purpose because if you understand your anger, if you understand how you do anger, if you understand your anger ritual, you can interrupt that ritual, that pattern, and actually bring your anger under control. And that is the goal for this study. And we do live in a very angry world. Anger is one of the characteristics of our society, and we see that manifested in road rage, mass shootings, murders, domestic violence, child abuse. We've seen it in the demonstrations and the riots. There are a lot of angry people in our world today. And this impacts Christians as well. In fact, Christian counselors tell us that 50% of the people who come for counseling have issues with anger. So anger has impacted the Christian world as well. And so we want to figure out what our anger looks like and bring that anger under control. The good news is that anger is not a new issue. It existed back in the first century when the Apostle Paul wrote the book of Ephesians. And Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 and 27, "In your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." From those 2 verses, I want us to look at 4 things concerning anger, 4 things that will help us understand our anger ritual. We looked at 2 of those last week, and I just want to quickly review those 2 and move on to points 3 and 4 for this week. Number 1 is defining your anger. Paul writes in verse 26, "In your anger." Paul never tells us don't get angry because Paul understands that anger is part of our emotions. God gave us that emotion for a purpose. And anger is an emotion that tells us that something is wrong. And that's why we get angry. So Paul tells us that anger in and of itself is not wrong. Getting angry is not a sin. Anger can become a sin based upon what we do when we're angry. And that's part of what we want to talk about, how to manage our anger and how to use our anger in a positive way. Anger is like one of those warning lights on the dashboard of your car. It lights up when something is wrong. So anger tells you that something is wrong in your life. So when you get angry, you need to ask the question, what am I angry about? What is causing me to be angry? Neil Warren points out that anger is not a primary emotion. It's not the root problem. It's a symptom. You're experiencing anger because either you're hurt, you're frustrated, or you're afraid. So when you get angry, you need to ask yourself the question, is something hurting me? Either physically or emotionally? Am I frustrated by something that's happening in my life? Or am I afraid of what might happen? And is that causing my anger? So when you're angry, you need to ask those questions. And you need to identify what is the source, what is the root problem that's causing my anger. And then we talked about demonstrating anger. Paul writes in verse 26, "In your anger, do not sin." So Paul recognizes, yes, you're going to get angry, but when you get angry, Paul says, don't sin. Don't use your anger in such a way that it hurts people. And there are two basic ways to demonstrate anger. There are two kinds of people. One is the exploder. And an exploder is someone who expresses their emotions openly. When an exploder gets angry, everybody knows it because there's this little explosion that takes place. They're very open in displaying their emotions. The challenge for the exploder is that their explosion may appear to others to be a nuclear explosion, meaning there's a lot of collateral damage that takes place when an exploder bursts forth with anger. So that's one of the challenges if you happen to be an exploder. Other people are stuffers. And stuffers are individuals who don't like to display their emotions. So when they get angry, instead of exploding, they stuff it deep inside themselves. And if you ask a stuffer if anything's wrong, they'll probably say no. If you ask a stuffer if they're angry, they'll probably say no. And in reality, they're really not being honest with their emotions. They're stuffing those emotions so they don't have to deal with them, but those emotions are still there. Eventually, the stuffer does explode. And this gets very confusing because eventually there's no place left to stuff anger. And so that's when the explosion takes place. And what causes the explosion, or the last thing that causes the explosion, could just be a minor thing. It's kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. We've heard that expression. And really, when a stuffer explodes, they're not exploding over one thing. They're exploding over 5 things, 6 things, 7 things, however many things they've stuffed since they last exploded. So that becomes very confusing to people in their life. So if you're a stuffer, you need to learn to be more honest about your anger and more honest about your emotions. Well, tonight let's move on to number 3, and that is destructive anger. Paul writes in verse 26, "Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry." In other words, don't let anger take over your life. People who go to bed angry, people who wake up every morning angry, they're angry all day, they go to bed again angry. Anger has taken over their life. So one of the key steps in overcoming our anger is to realize just how destructive that anger is. If you are an angry person, your anger is costing you in a really big way. And I want to point out some of those ways that anger is costing people. When you get angry, you quickly move from rational thinking to irrational thinking. And as you make that transition from being very rational to being very irrational, many people in their anger make decisions. And most of those decisions are not wise decisions. In fact, most of those angry decisions are poor decisions. So a lot of people end up making very poor choices because they made their choice in a state of anger. And so if you have a tendency to be angry and to make choices while you're angry, chances are those are irrational, impulsive kinds of choices. Another issue is that a person, when they get angry, will often attack the person instead of attacking the problem. There's a problem that's causing you to be angry, and you need to solve the problem, and you need to do it in such a way that you don't attack the person. You see, when you're angry, there's a problem that needs to be solved. But when you attack the person, now you have 2 problems that need to be solved. You have the original problem, and now you've just hurt somebody by attacking them verbally with your anger. So when you're angry, you can lose a lot of friends by attacking people. And everybody knows who the exploder is. Everybody who knows who the angry person is, and they try to avoid that person. So instead of attracting people into your life, you're repelling people out of your life because of your anger. Also, if anger stays with you a long time, it can lead to resentment. You can hold a grudge. Your anger will refuse to be pacified. You carry anger with you for a very long time. And a lot of people are still angry over something that happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. They haven't solved the problem. They haven't resolved their anger. And every once in a while, that situation will flash through their mind and they'll get angry all over again. There are family members who haven't spoken in many years because somebody got angry and didn't deal with their anger. So anger can lead to resentment. So no wonder Paul says, don't even let the sun go down on your anger. Resolve that issue that day. Don't wait 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years to resolve that anger because it will turn to resentment. And finally, anger that's lived inside of you for a long time can lead to depression. It can also make you very irritable, such that even little things will begin to set you off. And everybody gets to walk around on eggshells when they're around you because they know you're irritable, and if they do something, they could set you off. So anger is destructive. It's costing you. It's causing you to make poor decisions. It's causing you to attack people instead of loving people. It's causing you to have resentment and holding a grudge. It can also depress you. It can also make you very irritable. So if you have anger issues, what's it costing you? And once you know what it's costing you, that's your motivation to move to step 4. And step 4 is defeating anger. Paul writes in Ephesians 4:27, do not give the devil a foothold. You know, Peter describes the devil as a roaring lion who's kind of prowling around looking for somebody to devour. And Satan has devoured many people because of anger. And that anger issue becomes a foothold for Satan in your life. It gives him an opportunity to take over your life and destroy your life. You know, Jesus came to give us life abundantly. Satan wants to give us destruction and despair in our lives. And anger is one of those things that can give Satan a foothold in your life. And that's why we need to defeat anger. So one of the keys to defeating anger is to have a desire to defeat anger. Sadly, many people justify their anger instead of taking responsibility for their anger. Many people will say, yeah, I wasn't that angry. You know, it wasn't that big of a deal. You know, I just got a little bit angry. Or I don't get angry that often. When you find yourself making excuses for your anger, you have an anger issue. If many people in your life, your spouse, your children, your friends, keep telling you, you have an anger problem, you need to listen to them. You need to take responsibility for your anger. Because as long as you deny that you have a problem, you'll never solve the issue. You must take responsibility for your anger. Also, you need to learn how to communicate in such a way that you solve the problem. When you communicate in anger, many times you're not solving the problem, you're just adding to the problem. So one way to deal with your anger and defeat your anger is to learn to communicate in such a way that you're actually solving the problem and not creating more problems for you. So I want to point out 4 constructive ways to communicate that will help you defeat your anger. And the first way is to slow down. If you had an anger issue as a child, chances are your mother told you, when you get angry, count to 10. And mom just wanted you to stop, slow down, and count to 10. What's that all about? Well, remember, when you get angry, you have moved from rational thinking to irrational thinking. But if you'll stop and count to 10, you can move from irrational thinking back to rational thinking. Those 10 seconds can make all the difference in the world. So instead of reacting to a situation impulsively, by counting to 10, you can now act upon the situation in a very rational way. So a great way to interrupt your anger ritual is just remember what your mom said years ago. When you get angry, stop and count to 10 before any word comes out of your mouth. Because chances are, if you react impulsively, you're going to say things and do things that you're going to regret. But if you'll stop and count to 10, your rational mind can take over. Number 2 is to speak the truth in love. When you're angry with someone, you need to express those feelings. You need to have that uncomfortable conversation. And you just simply have to do that. But instead of speaking the truth in anger, try speaking the truth in love. Now, if you speak the truth in anger, what's going to happen? Well, the other person's going to get angry too, and then they're going to give you some angry feedback right back in your face, right? We've seen conversations and arguments before. One person says something in an angry way, then the other person responds by being a little bit more angry, and then it's your turn again, and you have to be a little more angry than the person who just spoke to you, and pretty soon you don't even recognize what you're arguing about. You just know you need to yell louder and be more angry in order to win, or so you think. When we put forth anger, chances are we're going to get anger right back at us. But what if we speak the truth in love? What if we just calm down and speak the truth in such a way that it expresses love? Well, chances are if we're giving forth love, there's more of an opportunity to get love in return. In fact, Proverbs 15:1 says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath." So if you're in the middle of an argument, one way to calm down is to give a gentle answer. It'll calm you down. It'll calm the other person down as well. Speak the truth, but do it in love. And then number 3, don't stuff the emotion. Many times when we stuff the emotion, the problem just gets worse. We think sometimes, I'm just going to stuff this so I can ignore it. I don't have to deal with it. But really, by stuffing it, it just gets bigger. And eventually, you're going to explode anyways. So just take a deep breath. Be honest with yourself about what you're feeling, and then express that to the other person. So when your spouse says to you, "Is something wrong?" instead of saying no, say, "Yeah, there is." And have that awkward conversation. You need to do that anyways. So don't stuff it. Be honest. Get the issue out on the table and resolve it quickly. And then number 4, solve the problem. Again, anger is a warning that something is wrong. So figure out what's wrong and then work to solve the issue. So attack the problem, don't attack the person. And that takes some practice to do that. So attack the issue without attacking the person. Solve the problem without saying negative things about the person. That's your ultimate goal in dealing with your anger. You want to solve the problem. And your anger will go away. Your anger will subside if you find a solution to the problem. So work on the problem. Don't be negative toward the person. Don't attack them. Attack the problem. Work together on the problem and look for a resolution. One of the ways to get rid of that anger over what happened a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, is to learn to forgive. The Bible tells us to forgive as we have been forgiven. And sometimes that takes a while to forgive. Forgiving is not an easy thing. It's not an overnight thing. but you need to work on it and ask God to help you to forgive what somebody did to you. And if you'll work on forgiving, the anger will subside, the resentment will go away, the grudge will disappear, and you're going to feel a whole lot better on the inside. You see, anger is one of those things we can experience over and over again every time we bring it up. But if we let it go, if we forgive, if we ask God to help us to learn to forgive, that anger will go away. Well, we can't control what other people say or what other people do, but we can work on ourselves and make the necessary changes. And anger management is not something that's resolved overnight. It's something you have to work on. But one of the things you can do is to understand your anger. Take an objective look at how you express anger. And the more you understand your anger, the more you can get control over it. So, once you understand your anger ritual, you can interrupt your anger. You can interrupt that function called anger that you display. And you may remember years ago when we had the records that we had to play with a needle. And we would put the records on there and the needle would play. But every once in a while that needle would scratch that record. And when it scratched the record would never play the same again, which is why we eventually replaced them with CDs and other things. But anger's that way too. Once you interrupt it enough, it won't play the same way again. And you can get control of your anger. So, instead of allowing your anger to control you, you can control it, and God can give you victory in this key area of your life. And just think about all the benefits of finally being able to manage your anger. You'll have more friends. You'll be happier. You'll be more joyful on the inside. You won't have to live with that resentment and that grudge and all of that stuff from the past. You will absolutely be free. So, in a world that's angry, as believers in Jesus Christ, we need to manage our anger. We need to get control of that so that we can be an example to people of how to solve problems without hurting people. Well, I hope you found this helpful tonight. All of us probably have some things to work on, so write them down, make them a matter of prayer, and understand your anger. Well, just a reminder as we wrap things up, coming up this Sunday, if you're ready to come to church on campus, 9:30 is the contemporary service, 11 o'clock is the traditional service, and if you're not ready to come out yet, and I completely understand if you're not, we have on YouTube and Facebook, music, Sunday school, a message, and the children's message as well. So until we get to meet again, either in person or online, let me encourage you to stay safe, understand your anger, and God bless you.